This is Mel from Bangle Whisper. Welcome to Bangle Whisper. Hi, I hope all of you are doing awesome. Today we're going to do another ghost story. So, this story is about a boy named Ronnie. Ronnie just had a huge fight with his father. His father is drinking heavily today again. It's outside pouring rain, and he was just sitting in front of the house waiting for Ronnie. And Ronnie got in around 2 a.m. But it wasn't Ronnie's fault that Ronnie got in about 2 a.m. because Ronnie works after school. Morning he went to his college. He was attending a community college, and then right after his studies he went to work. He was working at Target, and since this was Christmas time, holiday season, usually stores open sometimes very late, and then they have to clean up, so people were able to work longer hours and make more money, as Ronnie needed the money too much. So father was drunk and sitting lonely, and they had this old black and white TV, and he was watching that and fell asleep in the living room couch. They had some old couch. This house was very, very old. It's probably more than 100 years old, but Ronnie's father, Joe, did not have any money to fix it up. After Ronnie's mother passed away, Lillian, Ronnie's mother, was very hard-working, nice lady, and she was the glue for keeping the family together. And she worked very hard. She worked taking care of elderly people. So Ronnie's mother was she was taking care of Mrs. Smith after Mr. Smith passed away in this very house. And this house is very huge, big mansion. Mr. Smith was very well known, famous artist, and he used to have a portrait studio in the attic. And this attic is full of big portrait and pictures which Mr. Smith drew himself. He was an artist, and his painting used to be sold for lots of money. And they have this huge house, and once there was a robbery in the house, and luckily that time Mrs. Smith wasn't home. She went to her kitty party with her friends, and they were having a grand party in one of the friends' house, but they called it a kitty party. It was just a weird name for a grand party. But Mr. Smith did not like going anywhere. He was a homebody, and his passion was painting, and his paintings used to be sold for thousands, about $100,000. So their attic was a treasure. Attic was full of his painting. Now the thieves were actually set up by Mr. Smith's enemy, his competitor, and those thieves came, and they really didn't take any money or anything. They just murdered Mr. Smith. Now, after Mr. Smith was murdered, everybody told Mrs. Smith to go away, but she refused to do so. And she had a stepson who never came or visited anything. But strangely, right after Mr. Smith died, he just showed up at the door to get all his share. So he basically robbed Mrs. Smith out of lots of money, And Mrs. Smith, after Mr. Smith died, Mrs. Smith really was very sad and depressed. First of all, the loss of Mr. Smith and the fact that he was murdered, and then his stepson, her stepson, Mr. Smith's son, came and took all the money. So Mrs. Smith was left with this huge house, the burden of the huge house. Now she was not able to fix up this house financially or emotionally. And now Ronnie's mother, Lillian, used to work taking care of Mrs. Smith, because even though Mrs. Smith, while Mr. Smith was alive, Mrs. Smith was very beautiful, vibrant lady. But once Mr. Smith passed away, then Mrs. Smith kind of was so sad that she pretty much gave up on life. So the doctor kind of told that she got Alzheimer, but she really didn't get Alzheimer. She was just extremely depressed, and everything just came down all together on her. And right after, magically, her stepson vanished right after he got all the money and everything, and he wanted nothing to do with his stepmom. Anyway, so Lillian was taking care of Mrs. Smith, and Mrs. Smith, like, after Mr. Smith died, within a year, Mrs. Smith died. She got cancer, she got very sick, and the doctor said she had Alzheimer's too. She couldn't take care of herself. So anyway, she died in the same house. So, and then the lawyer came and knocked at Lillian's home, and when Lillian opened, and then the lawyer sat down and talked with her and told her that Mrs. Smith made a will, and in that will, Mrs. Smith gave her the house, and Mrs. Smith had, after all the money was gone on her cancer treatment, she had left only $10,000, and she gave that one to Lillian. So Lillian was very happy, and Ronnie, Lillian, and Joe, they were all living in a small one-bedroom apartment. Now, after they got this house, they came to see the house was huge. Outside looked very run down, but inside was okay. Everything was working, so it was okay to live. Only thing they need to worry is how they will pay for the utility and all that, considering the fact the house was huge. But anyway, they moved in, and when they moved in, that time Ronnie was about 16 years old. So as they moved into the house, that time Ronnie's father was working, and Ronnie's father had a good job. He was working for some private company. And then as soon as they moved in to that house, their problems started. So one of the first problem happened is Ronnie's father, Joey, he was fixing up the outside painting and all that, because they couldn't afford to pay professional painters, so they were doing pretty much fixing painting themselves. So Faye fell down and injured his back and leg, and then he had a job which was physically demanding, but he couldn't stand or sit for long periods of time. After the injury, it was mostly on his lying down on his back. So after this, he lost his good job. And after that, about a year, there was treatment and all that, and Ronnie's mom was working two jobs, and she was working taking care of elderly people, and then nighttime she was working at nursing home, and nighttime the patients all slept, so she had to do 2 rounds and just cleaning up the patient, and then she could just sit little bit in the chair and get a little bit nap. And when she worked for the elderly ladies, she also took care of them, and when the ladies were taking naps, she used to take naps. So throughout the day and night all together she probably got 6 hours of sleep, little broken pieces, and that's how she was managing with her two jobs, paying for everything. So then everyone in that house was really very much suffering. Ronnie's father got hurt, mother was working too much, and Ronnie was only 16, and his 2 years of high school was very, very difficult. This was the time for his SATs and everything, but nothing seemed to be good. Ronnie was, and the parents were always fighting, yelling, shouting, screaming. So to get away from those, Ronnie used to go to the attic and study. But when he went to attic to study, he couldn't really study. He felt like the attic, as soon as he went to study there, he would fall asleep, he will have a lot of headaches, and he just didn't feel good. His body did not feel good, and he will be drawn to see those pictures, what pictures there, and all these things. So it wasn't a good place for him to study. And in the house there was a lot of fights all the time between mom and dad. So by the time he graduated high school, somehow he graduated. He knew he had to graduate, so he graduated high school. In those 2 years, his mom got seriously sick, and then after some doctor's visit and all that, they found out she had breast cancer. And 2 years later, sadly, she passed away. And Ronnie tried his best with the $10,000 they had from Mrs. Smith. That was for Ronnie's college, but Ronnie refused to use it for his college. He used it up all on mom's cancer treatment, but still he couldn't save her. Mom was his best friend and he couldn't save her. So after she died, after Lillian died, Ronnie was just broken up. He didn't have any purpose in life to live anymore. And then after Lillian died, then Joe had no choice but to go to work with his broken back because there was nobody to pay for all the bills. Even though they got the house for free, but they still had to pay taxes on that house. And then Mrs. Smith was nice enough to leave the money for the taxes with the Lillian for next 10 years. He said she knew that Lillian couldn't pay taxes on that house, so she left the money for next 10 years taxes so they didn't have to be bothered. But in the meantime, Lillian passed away 2 years later. Now, Joey was working in CVS and he was getting only $10 an hour to stock things and some light work. And that was just only $400 after taxes every week. And that's just enough for them to eat and pay some bills. And they were living on bare minimum. They kept only one light on. They save money on electricity, save money on food. And the house was big, backyard was big, but Joe's back was so broken he couldn't do much gardening. And Ronnie had no time. He was going college, paying for his own college, and working at Target in the evening. So when he came home, Joey would be drinking. He developed a new passion of drinking, and he would be shouting and drinking and yelling. And so Ronnie had no place but to go in the attic and study. So one day, as he was sleeping, and then he woke up, and when he woke up, he saw a man, and this man was going from picture to picture, and this man was sometimes standing and drawing the pictures, and Ronnie was so scared. And then when he saw the man, then he realized that, Oh, he saw that picture in the house when they moved into the house. This was a picture of Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith. So this was the ghost in the attic was Mr. Smith, and he was there. And since he was murdered, so the house was not only haunted, it was cursed. And then Mrs. Smith died in cancer. Then Ronnie's mother died, so the house was really cursed. So Ronnie was very scared, but he came down. But they didn't have a choice because they didn't have a place to go. Ronnie's father didn't have a place to go. Ronnie didn't have a place to go. Then, about a year later, Ronnie's father died there too in heart attack. So then Ronnie was left all alone and he didn't want to stay in there. So, and there was nobody to buy that place anyway. He decided to keep that place and go live somewhere else, renting a small apartment and work very hard and slowly fix that place and sell it. But in the meantime, nobody could live there because it was cursed. Anybody lived there was dying in cancer and a lot of sufferings and unhappiness and health problem. So this was the Ronnie's story where Ronnie saw the ghost in the attic and there was a ghost living in the attic, which was Mr. Smith. So thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share, and I will see you with many more. Thank you. Hi. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe.